other pages are saying no sound, so we'll wait just a minute to see. Can you hear us now? Somebody can just respond if you can hear me now. That might help. Let me see if I can hear me now. So there you go. I can hear me now, so we're ready to go. So once again, we're doing a series called Now What? What do we do now? What do we do now that we've marched? What do we do now that we've rallied? What do we do now that we've protested? What do we do now to make our communities better? What do we do now in the midst of this season where change can really, really happen for our community, for our people? And so what do we do now? So those are the conversations that we're about to have, and we've had them in the last few weeks, and we're going to have one today, a different kind of conversation than what we've had in the past probably. Once again, this is Kenneth Plummer. He is the founder of Forward Thinkers, and I've asked him to come talk to us about what can we do now economically. How do we build economic power? How do we build economic wealth for ourselves? In the midst of all of our Juneteenth stuff and all of these other things, I began to read about Tulsa and Black Wall Street. And one of the things that I found real interesting is in Black Wall Street, $1 would pass around that community 19 times before it left. So meaning they were supporting one another in that community so that everybody was able to make sure that they were prospering before that $1 left that community. And so I said, this is what we need to do in our community. And I think Mount Vernon and some surrounding communities are perfect places where we can build wealth within our own community and become economically empowered. And so I want you to talk some more about that.
Pastor Polk, thank you so much for having me on your show today. Great Centennial family. So you're right. I mean, you know, we're in the midst of one of the most significant social periods of social unrest in our history. I'm 51 years old, and I don't think I've ever experienced a movement like we have currently. And I think, you know, Mount Vernon, just talk about the city of Mount Vernon, is very uniquely situated in order to take advantage of that. You know, we're 25 minutes, you know, away from the greatest city in the world. We have a black administration, black city council, black state senators, black assembly person. So if not here, where, right? And so you're right. And our spending power as a black community in this country is roughly 1.3, 1.4 trillion dollars with a T, trillion dollars. But the second we get a dollar, it goes out to an Italian contractor, or if it's a Jewish, the dollars may circulate 10, 11, 12 times before it goes out to maybe an Italian contractor, the case may be. So how do we combat this situation? And I believe that, you know, certainly governments, you have the PPP in New York, you have the New York Forward program. It's very important for municipalities and governments to certainly have policies in place. You look in the history, the New Deal, right, and things of that nature. But I've always felt that it was always the private sector that really can drive the economy. So you look at a place like Greater Centennial Church, 5,000 plus members you have business owners here, you have entrepreneurs. We now need to kind of pull our resources together and do an audit. You know, what do we have here in Mount Vernon? How many black businesses do we have currently? Right. How many employees? What are their average gross dollar revenues? If someone is an Italian and it's a contractor, if I'm building a house, you know, how can I utilize their services? So we have to really kind of first take an audit of what we have available in terms of services and goods. We need to continue to have conversations like we're having right now, and I think that goes a long way in terms of economic development.
So even as we talk about entrepreneurs and we talk about those who are building business and trying to open businesses here in the city of Mount Vernon or anywhere, how do we help empower small business owners, minority small business owners? How do we help empower them and then support them? And I'm gonna say this while I'm saying this, I'll say it again at the end. If you are a small business owner, minority small business owner, you have a business you want us to come to, put your business right there so we know who you are and what you do. And if we can support you, we definitely want to support you. So whoever you are, you want us to support you, and you have a legitimate small business, we want to be able to support you. So how do we help entrepreneurs
that's a great
and strengthen them?
Just looking at post-COVID, you know, that's a very loaded question from the standpoint of, so one of the experiences a lot of black businesses had was that we didn't have capacity. So a lot of white-owned businesses had more employees, so they were able to downsize and still kind of sustain themselves.
Yeah.
They were also able to very quickly convert a lot of the business to the online model. So if we didn't have, we're already at a bare bones, the typical black-owned business is pretty much a solo entrepreneur. Only one, it's an owner-operated business. So we have to help our businesses gain access to capital, lines of credit, and also build capacity. You know, one thing that we're doing so we have a 10,000 square foot facility in downtown Mount Vernon, 11 West Prospect, and I guess I am trying to do a plug, if you will. But we have to have a loving business environment for black businesses. You know, sharing of best ideas, best practices, having a database, a one-stop shop location of all our businesses, where they're located, what kind of services they provide, providing information, providing resources, advocacy, whether it be locally through the mayor's office, the IDA, or through the Westchester County Office of Economic Development, Bridget Gibbons, who runs that organization. So I think it's really about sharing information, people like yourself who are in a leadership position, really advocating and serving as a launch point, if you will, for small businesses.
So how would somebody who wants to start a small business, what do they do? Do they go to forward thinkers? What do they do to say, hey, I got this great idea, I want to open whatever it is, how do I do it? Is there help for them in that capacity?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that we used to do every single month at the facility was with SCORE. So SCORE Westchester is a nonprofit, been around 50 years, has 400 locations. And SCORE Westchester, which is an organization of current and former CEOs, would do free workshops at our facility. And they have a workshop if you want to start a business. And it's very important to understand that owning a business is not for everybody.
Right.
Right? You know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have the 9 to 5, you know what you got to do, you have the weekly paycheck, because having your own business is a significant commitment. So the first thing I would do is probably attend some sort of workshop to really begin to understand the type of sacrifice and commitment that it takes and requires to be a small business owner. Because it takes discipline, you should be passionate about it. It takes, I think, support from your family members, depending upon if you're trying to go into that full-time, right. You need to make sure that your home situation and you have that type of environment that's supportive, and that's one of the things that we try to supply at the facility. And we're pretty honest, you know, it's not for everybody, and we want to give you basically a very really honest assessment of where you are as a business person or a potential business person.
I think that's great information, because as we think about those who may be passionate about something and may do it well on one level, just opening that business may not be the best model for them to be able to go into. The next thing I want to talk about is how do we make sure that we are, black and brown people are some of the biggest consumers in the world. We probably spend more dollars than anybody else in the world. How do we now rethink that in this COVID age that we're in, that we no longer need to be the biggest consumers, but we need to be the biggest savers, we need to be the biggest ones who are looking at finances in a totally different way so that we can build our families, our communities, our homes? How do we become the homeowners and not the renters? How do we begin to make sure that we can begin to level this economic playing field?
Well, I think financial literacy, that's something, again, a very important thing that we need to address with the black community. And I think it should start certainly at a younger age. I certainly think it's something that we should start in our school system. You know, your credit and the importance of that, which you don't have to have capital if you have credit, right? And so I think that's something that we need to address, is financial literacy. And that just should answer for that.
When we really start thinking about what now, what's next, and certainly with this COVID season we're in, this thing changes daily. So it's hard to look so far down the road of what's next. But as you look out there, what's next? You know,
I think for small businesses, first we have to do an assessment. And just looking at it from a local level, look at Mount Vernon. You know, how many businesses do we currently have? How many black businesses within the city of Mount Vernon have yet to reopen. Having conversations, having a think tank of key individuals who can begin to think about next steps. For us, we're in the process of starting an advisory board. We have, one of our pastors in the city, Reverend Richardson, is going to do a tour of the facility. He sits on the board of Comcast, and they just committed to $100 million of funds specifically toward black businesses. So identifying what resources we have right here in this community. I mean, we have some some significant members who live here, but we don't realize the actual impact that they have and the resources that they have. So I think we have to do an audit, if you will, that's the term that I like to use, of what resources we have here currently on the private and public sector. And then we have to come up with a plan of next steps. Whether that's, one of the things in order to create wealth and change the widening, wealth disparities in our communities through the black business experience. And I think that the fact of the matter is, again, we spend $1.3 trillion. How much money is that spent here in the city of Mount Vernon? We have over 300 million that residents in the city of Mount Vernon spend, but not within the city of Mount Vernon. How do we begin to kind of change that narrative?
And then the other question is, as we look at what's next, what's the goal as we take the audit, as we do the workshops, as we do all those things? Is the goal to build Mount Vernon into the next Tulsa, the next Black Wall Street? Is this the place? As beautifully located as this city is, can that be one of the goals, that this is the place where if you're a person of color, you can come and have a fair shot at making some type of success in a variety of different social economic ways?
I believe that, and I've gambled my whole future on that. I mean, I believe that, again, Mount Vernon is very uniquely situated. And what's happening, and so the vacancy rate in New York City, they're saying, is going to quickly approach roughly 5%, which is the point of rent control. And they're saying that you have people like the governor of Connecticut saying that he doesn't believe that the NPA model is going to exist anymore from a standpoint of commuters going down to New York City 5 days a week, right? And so experts believe that a lot of the bedroom communities, such as Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Yonkers, parts of the island, New Jersey, that have close proximity, because you still want to have access to New York City. I mean, New York City is trillions of dollars run through the city. And so Mount Vernon, which literally has 6 train stations, when you talk about Mount Vernon East, Mount Vernon West, Fleetwood, and the West train station, we border the 2 and the 5. If you live at 590 East 3rd Street, you're walking a block to the Pelham train station. We have an artery of parkways, cross county, Bronx River, not too from 87, 95. And so we have to figure out a way to take advantage of our close proximity to the city. So I do believe, in my case, office space, co-working facilities definitely have a path forward. So we have to kind of figure out what are the opportunities past the service industries. A lot of businesses, typically black-owned businesses, provide services and not products. And so we need to begin to diversify our services. We have a lot of barbershops and nail salons, and that's fine, but how do you begin to make sure those folks are now paying into their taxes, and so they can apply for the PPP, right, and other benefits.
Absolutely.
And so, again, building capacity is very, very important. So, but I do believe that we have a current administration that's very sympathetic. We have a great legislator, Lyndon Williams, so certainly through the county. We have a George Latimer who's from Mount Vernon. So I do believe from a public sector, we need to advocate more to make sure those resources are being spent here. In addition, we have to do an audit of all the projects taking place in Mount Vernon. Every single development project, who you're hiring, are there minority and local hiring goals. One thing that we did, I had a conversation this morning with a guy named Michael Petrillo. They're building a building on 546 Locust Street. That was helpful in getting their approvals. And there's a company on Stevens Avenue, a black sister, Magnafeet Cabinetry. So we're connecting them to make sure they have a fair shot. I think she's going to get the contract, and that's significant. When someone's going to get a 6-figure contract, we were able to get someone the cleaning contract, a guy named Jamie Dickerson for the New Rochelle Housing Authority. So what we have to do is do an audit, create a list of all the businesses within Mount Vernon, and then we have to figure, who do I know that needs a service that Greater Centennial provides, or the forward thinkers provides, or whomever. So I think it's really about beginning to channel our resources collectively within our community.
You said a couple things I want to highlight and push on. One was in this season in which we're living, a lot of people not going into the city, not wanting to go in the city. How do we take advantage of some of the spaces that we have open here in the city of Mount Vernon and say, okay, you don't want to go to the city, let's meet here, these temporary office spaces, and that how do we take advantage of those spaces? How does somebody tap into that industry, that thought process? And then talk a little bit more about development. We hear a lot in this city about development, what's being developed. Do we need more affordable housing? No more affordable housing, big high rises, no big high rises. And I want to talk more about how do we make sure that the residents of Mount Vernon benefit from whatever's being built. If it's the job-wise being built, the job after it's being built, the management after it's being built, all of those things. And then how do we begin to train or give our citizens what they need to be able to apply for and qualify for these jobs and these contracts? So I know I said a lot.
Yeah, it's a great question. So in order of your questions, how do we begin to take advantage of the increasing vacancy rate with New York City and making sure office space and commercial spaces are filled within the city of Mount Vernon? I think, certainly pre-COVID even, as far as housing, let's jump to housing, a lot of folks in New York City, Brooklyn, were looking at Mount Vernon and surrounding areas because they were being priced out. A lot of those areas. The rents in Brooklyn in some places are more expensive than New York City.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that Mount Vernon West train station specifically is the shortest commute in all of Westchester, about a minute or so less even than Mount Vernon East. And so how do we as a city begin to take advantage of our close proximity to New York City? I think that the city as a whole, development is still going to take place in Westchester, right? You look at White Plains, New Rochelle. New Rochelle was still developing all throughout COVID, right? They never stopped, right? And so as residents, we have to recognize that we have to build in order to begin. So one of the problems that we've had historically in Mount Vernon is that mostly everything we've done as far as development has been affordable housing. If I was to do an audit and name all the projects in the last 30 years, there's probably been 2 in the last 8 that were market rate. Everything else is, for the most part, as far as multifamily, has been mixed use, commercial, residential. And certainly why I'm a big advocate. I have clients who do affordable housing. I relocated all the families in heritage homes in New Rochelle between the families and affordable housing. So I'm a big advocate and proponent of affordable housing. And I believe seniors need a place to age in place. But we need some market rate at this point, because when you have affordable housing, you get a pilot paying little taxes, and those pilots don't necessarily always cover all the services, fire, police, DPW. And so we're in a unique position because of our close proximity to New York City to do some market rate housing. Unfortunately, post-COVID now, a lot of the market rate housing banks aren't lending as quick as they were, even 3-4 months ago. But because still, a lot of the renters and homeowners in New York City are now looking towards the Hudson Valley and other areas because they kind of were concerned that I'm here locked inside this apartment. I'm paying, $3,000-4,000 a month for, 500, 600 square feet, when I can have a similar situation in Mount Vernon, New York, for instance, larger, maybe half or certainly significantly lower. So I think there is a path forward for places like Mount Vernon. But those things have.
How do you do that without gentrification taking over?
That's a great question. I think, again, I don't profess to have all the answers, but I do believe that in affordable housing, a lot of these affordable housing units are typically sponsored with, you have a CDC, Greater Centennial, Grace Baptist Church has UGMA, which is their CDC. So we need to make sure that we partner with the right partners.
Okay.
As far as market rate, you really can't automatically dictate and determine, who moves in.
Right.
So that's a conversation that needs to be had moving forward. But I do believe that because of Mount Vernon's close proximity, and we can learn from the mistakes and also the wins in White Plains, Yonkers, and New Rochelle. I mean, surprisingly enough, for example, the Horizon, 50 Locust Street, those rents are $100 more per month than the waterfront apartment rentals in Yonkers and also Avalon and New Rochelle. So market rate definitely can exist in Mount Vernon, which by itself can certainly begin to stabilize the tax base.
Absolutely.
And so one thing we want to be very careful of with our vacancy and how that can impact homeowners and taxpayers, if we really start to increase the amount of vacancies commercial-wise, all that's going to happen is that those property owners are going to grieve those taxes, right? They'll go to court, win that, and that's going to be a line item in our budget. So the vacancy in commercial buildings have a direct impact on the taxes and homeowners. We have to be very mindful of that.
I think all of that is so important.
Okay.
But also making sure that the residents of Mount Vernon can prosper in the midst of development.
Okay.
And that they can see, yeah, this is good for us, okay, and not just good for them, right, whoever them is.
I get it.
You see, if it's, them is city council, them is, no, how do we make sure this is good for us? And it's good for us because I got a job. It's good for us because I learned a trade. It's good for us because I got to, open a business in the building. It was good for us because it helped our children this way or that way. It was good for us because this development poured into our school system. How do we make sure it's good for us?
Again, I think that begins with the leadership in the city of Mount Vernon. I believe that Sean has a plan. I can't speak for her. I mean, I certainly was a major supporter of her, as you know. But I know she's going to, at some point, release her plan for economic recovery within the city of Mount Vernon. I know she's working closely with Robin Mack and some other folks. Right now, they're going around the city and looking at doing, where they are as far as business community. But I agree with you. I think if a business or a developer receives an incentive from the city of Mount Vernon, they should be required to hire X amount of qualified local and minority contractors.
And we have to make sure we get our citizens to a place where they can qualify.
There you
so
go.
That it does not come back to say, well, you didn't have any qualified people, so I couldn't hire them. How do we make sure, what are the programs moving forward?
No question. That
we make sure that we have qualified electricians, plumbers, all of that.
True story. I'm not going to say the name of a good friend, young kid, the new to the Boys and Girls Club. I was involved in a project here in Mount Vernon that was going through demo. Brought him a hard hat, bought him boots, bought him jeans, bought him goggles, everything he needed. Stayed on the job 1 week. Construction is not for everybody.
Absolutely.
It's hard
work.
He stayed on the job 1 week. I cursed him out something good, but let me tell you. But so to that point, we want to make sure that, and it's twofold. It's not just laborers. I mean, we want to make sure that
right,
prior to development contract, the attorneys that are negotiating contracts.
Absolutely.
You look at 42 Broad Street, which I was involved in. That company, the electrical contract, went to a black-owned firm, Chris Williams Electric, South 10th Avenue. I'm not going to count as money, but that was a multi-million-dollar contract for a firm based here in Mount Vernon. And so it's not just about...
Yeah, so it's not just the laborers I'm talking
right,
about. I'm talking about how everybody,
right,
once again, how do you make this good for us? Right. We'll take some questions now. If you have questions, I'm on Facebook Live now, so if you have questions, I can take them now as we just continue to talk and wrap this up in a few minutes, because I think there's so much potential in the city of Mount Vernon. I think there's so many things that can just bless this city if we come together and make sure that we are doing everything that we can do to push people forward and to push everybody forward. I believe the fire is hot, and we need to strike now where the fire is hot, not just in making sure that there's police reforms, not just making sure there's legislative reforms, but making sure there's some economic reforms as well in our city and in our community. I think this is so very important that this is an opportunity for us not to just look at one thing, But I think this is an opportunity for us to look at everything. And if we look at everything and do it systematically and properly, we'll be able to see some changes for our community that will bless our community. Once again, if you have any questions, we'll be very, very happy to take those questions. Ken, any final thoughts for you around this subject? I think this was, for me, it was really good to hear some of this stuff and to hear that some things that people may not know what's happening in the city. I really like this thought process of, I don't want to go to the city for a meeting, but is there a place, can I rent out some space at Forward Thinkers to have a meeting? Is there another building in the city I can rent out an office building and say, I'm going to have this meeting? It's not my permanent space, but it's an opportunity for me to just have some meetings that'll bless people.
Let me tell you what. So we're based at 11 West Prospect, City of Mount Vernon, directly across from City Hall and the police station. We have the entire second, third, and fifth floor of an office facility, and essentially we're a group of folks who collaborate, grow, and network together. We have currently about 90 to 100 members. You could be so as opposed to having a PO box or a business card and maybe the negative connotation associated with that. Maybe it's not a real business, what the case may be. So you become a member for as low as $60 per month. That gives you access to the building 24 hours a day. We collect and mail your packages, and then when you want to rent office space, you rent office space for $20 per hour. We have over 30 offices. Some of the offices are permanent offices. We can also, obviously, if you want to have your own office, you can do that as well. And then we also do a lot of networking events, symposiums, discussions. We're looking to ramp that up quite a bit. We'll be really, we're kind of rebranding. We're doing a new website. We're rebranding our facility to be called the Forward Thinkers Facility. We have a podcast studio on the second floor.
Nice.
And some of the things that we're working on right now is an investment club, also a real estate investment club with Sammy Saunders, one of our brokers in the building. And so it's a question of us, again, coming together and really beginning to kind of figure this out. I mean, we're in uncharted territories. No one has the answer. I've never experienced this. No one else has either.
Nobody's been this way.
But I do believe there are some examples historically. You said that, Black Wall Street in Tulsa, where we know that if we channel our resources together, we have numerous case studies where we've been able to. We had a security firm, Nature's Finest Security, with Brother Arthur and some other folks, and we were able to get them 8 buildings in the South Bronx, strictly a phone call. Security firm, they were a member, they didn't have a physical office. And we made a deal that we get you some contracts, you'll take an office in the building, and made a phone call. So we just have to take that and multiply that. There's no question in my mind that if we work together, we could probably start another 500 businesses within the city.
Nice.
And we have everything we need. I mean, there's no question that we have the resources, we have the economic power, we have the influence, we have the expertise. We just have to make a conscious decision to say that we're going to work together. And I think, out of every tragic situation, there's always an opportunity. And while the George Floyd thing but still is tragic, one of the benefits has been this conversation. Absolutely. And a lot of the policies. And I think we certainly want to continue to, keep the pressure and keep our knees on their necks, so to speak, whoever they are. But I think I'm a firm believer that while it's important to work with governments and the public sector, I'm always been a firm believer of working internally within the private sector. I'm a big proponent of self-sufficiency, being self-reliant. Not saying that other folks can't help us, but I'm not gonna rest. I'm not gonna rely on that. I think just Centennial Church. If we have 5,000 members, we all put, $100 in a pot for a year, per month. How much is that? We can buy buildings. I mean, the economic influence we can have within this city, just for this membership alone, is insane.
Absolutely.
And we have to kind of begin to really figure that out. And we don't even know 5,000 members. It could be 100 members. It could be 200 members, right?
Yep.
I belong through $1,000. You belong through $1,000. I'm pretty sure we get 10 people $1,000. We had 10 G's. There were properties the last time the city had an auction going for $20,000.
Right.
On 4th Avenue.
Right.
So we have the financial wherewithal to get this done.
It's time for us to stop not being just consumers, but making sure that we're owners. And so I want to thank Kenneth Plummer for joining us today. This is not the end of our economic conversation. We're going to have more conversations. We're going to do some financial literacy stuff. I'm committed to making sure that we do that. And we can even talk about, our investing club here at Greater Centennial, make sure we have the right people in the right place to make sure that we're doing it. So there's a lot of things that we can do, and if you're interested, as always, email me at pastor@greatercentennial.org, and I'll get back to you. But this has been a real good conversation. It's got my wheels moving. Hopefully it's gotten your wheels moving, because there's so much work for us to do. I've been enjoying these Now What conversations, these Talkback Tuesdays. We will not have one next Tuesday. But we'll be back the following Tuesday, and we'll run this through the end of July, trying to get some more people in to come on and have a conversation with us, and we just talk about some things that we can do now that we don't have to wait for. That as we're in this time of shutdown, this time of reset, this time of quarantine, this is the time we come and build so we can make a great comeback when everything opens back up and we become significant in our own community. So once again, thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing, Pastor, with us. We're grateful that you're here. Praying for you today. Definitely praying for each of you, and praying God is blessing you and God is keeping you, especially in this season. Let's pray. Father, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this opportunity to share this day. We thank you, dear God, that you've given us wisdom, you've given us knowledge, you've given us access. Now, God, would you just give us the vision that we need, that we can be prosperous, dear God. You said that you've come that we might have life and have it more abundantly. So, God, help us to level this socio-economic playing field, that, God, we would have opportunity as well. And then, dear God, let us not just make it to the top. Let us pull somebody else up to the top. Let us keep just reaching down and lifting up, reaching down and lifting up, reaching down and lifting up, so that our whole community, our whole congregation might be blessed. So, God, thank you for this time. We ask that you bless those who are sick, those who are shut in, those who may be down and out. We pray that you would touch the bereaved, those who are going through a season of grieving. We ask that you would comfort their hearts. Lord, we also ask that you be with those who are on the front lines, who are still essential, dear God, those who are still fighting COVID-19 each and every day. So be with doctors and nurses, be with those who are in the grocery stores and everywhere, dear God. Just surround them and continue to bless and keep them. So, God, we thank you for this time. We ask that you bless us now. In Jesus' name, amen. Once again, thank you for watching us. Don't forget, Greater Centennial, on Sunday at 11 a.m., we'll be doing our drive-through communion right here in the parking lot. You'll enter the 8th Avenue side, go out the 7th Avenue side. And don't forget to watch us and worship with us on Sunday morning at 9:30 right here on Facebook Live or greatercentennial.org, Periscope, or one of our other social media platforms. So we've been thankful and grateful for you watching with us today. God bless you. Have a great day.